Greetings to all my brothers and sisters on this planet, near and far, and to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who I indeed enjoy listening to and have heard many a time and do acknowledge that what he says is true. I have followed and understand the messages that have been given and have been trying to interact with you for a while. I even came all the way to Chicago on a long journey across road to see you, but it was not possible because they said you have to make a appointment. Not a problem because I realized I made no appointment and I had traveled so far, but yet and still I still had no interaction except for Brother Benny. And Brother Benny told me not to come back. But you know me, I'm not gonna come listen to that. Brother Benny doesn't know who or what or why I was there. And one day I hope to meet you, Minister Louis Farrakhan, Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I say honorable because I mean you've been there before I was even thought on this. Well, before I was born physically onto the earth, but you've been there, speaking for the brothers and sisters and trying to keep the conditions better for all of us by giving us the enlightenment, the speeches, and the teachings of the Honorable, let me see, Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm looking right now and I was listening to a speech, and I once again hear the mention of the mother of the universe, or the mother of the universe that we know, not Mary being born from Kemet. She wasn't born in Kemet. Yes, she was born in Kemet because if you really want to know the truth, the story starts in a place called Kemet. Ast had a son called Heru, and Heru, his father was killed by his brother and cut into pieces, and the pieces were scattered. And when the mother found those pieces, she could not find one, so she created a tech column where she flew up to the top of it and she interacted and had a child they call Horus or Heru. And we know the truth. Yes, the story of Jesus was created and plagiarized by the Europeans because they wanted people to think that this was a European story, but in reality, it was nowhere close to a European story. It was an ancient African story created by ancient African people. We, the people of America, the children of Israel stuck in a foreign land, carried here from on ships to a land that is not our own. See, I'm gonna let you understand that there's more to life than what we have been hearing and things that they're not telling us. These ancient histories that are tied into Kemet, these ancient histories that are tied into the ancient people of our history, you know, what they say, what people are missing right now is a man called Jesus. They're trying to find this man, but when you realize that the name itself was not even the name, because it says that there's no J's in Hebrew, so Hebrew could not have even had pronounced that name. And due on to the fact that it came from ancient Egypt or Kemet, there was no way for you to put that name into works and say Jesus when it was really Haru, that was the son that was waiting from, they say, the west and to set in the east, setting into the east coast of Africa once again to remember all those things that were taken away from us. One day we all have to travel back to that place again. Those people who are willing to go back and want to go back. We can't force everybody, but those that want to stay with the slave master and live in the slave master's land after this is over will probably be going through a lot of problems. I know, brothers and sisters, that it seems a lot and it might be a little crazy with the way I'm speaking to you and trying to inform you to understand that the things that we've been told is a lie. The history that we were enslaved in Egypt and we were there working to prove ourselves to the Pharaoh that we were building the temple to prove to the pharaoh that but it wasn't true. The real story about those pyramids is more they were power stations. They were built for the purpose of making electrical energy, and there was one pyramid that was for the pharaoh that had this place built, that his remains were there, but this was only because he wanted something that's great for himself. And it could have been even a situation deeper than that. But understand, brothers and sisters, there's things that you have not been told, and things you will never be told because the society is keeping information from you. But I wanted to meet the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan a while back. I took a long trip. I started on a moped and rode across into a certain area of the South where my moped died. I believe I made it into North Carolina, and my moped died. And the man at the moped police, gave me $150 to catch this bus up to Chicago, where I spent a few days sleeping around and about Masjid Mariam and in the area. Even I walked as far as, let's say, his Minister Louis Farrakhan's first house, the house that they have in the town, and I came back down to the masjid again, and I sat in front of it, and I walked up and down the place because I wanted to meet this man because the man inspires me to certain conditions, and I listen to some of the things that he's saying, and yes, it makes a lot of sense, but I don't think that I don't know. But I think if he was to have met me, would have enjoyed the conversation and probably would have enjoyed, you know, whatever. The brother is a good man. I mean, I don't have a problem with him. I love him to death. Matter of fact, if I was to meet him, I could probably sit down and talk to him for hours. But hey, it's not everything that we want in life doesn't happen. But one day when this whole insane war we're going through on this planet, and remember, this is a war we're going through. This is not. It is not just beating us up and doing the things they're doing to us because we're at that moment in that area. No, these things are being done because they've taken war against us, and the wars are slowly getting burnt down because it's not happening the way it was happening before. Because we're getting knowledge. Knowledge is the key. Once you know who you are, they can't do the things they did to you back in the day. Once you know who you are and you stand up for yourself and you stand up as who you are, not just walking around baseball caps and sneakers and this and that and blah 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 and pants falling down and clothes or no, I'm talking about when brothers and sisters start to get back into culture, start dressing as if they're in their right state of mind, start getting back into the African understanding of things and stop looking like a thug, a gangster, a hooker or a prostitute, all kind of conditions, then they'll have to respect us because they'll know that we're a little bit more awake than we were before. When you put on your clothes, when you put on your armor, they say the armor of God. The armor of God is when you start putting on the clothes and the righteous garments and start following the directions and listening to the laws and trying to be obedient to God and not fall into the trap of following fads and fashions of this society we're living in, because those fads and fashions, what they say, profiling people for their fads and fashions. So you just come back to God's ways and you won't be profiled, so it won't be the same situation. But like I said before, I made a long trip all the way to Chicago from South Carolina on a moped in the start. And I didn't get to see the person I wanted to see because it wasn't time yet. God has not given me permission yet to see this person. I still have things to do. I even spent times in homeless shelters because I wanted to see what the homeless shelter was about because I kept getting told, go to the homeless shelter, go to the homeless shelter. I wanted to be under God. I wanted to lay and rest and sleep in places where the sun and the sky and the moon and the stars were over top of me. A homeless shelter was nasty, dirty, bugs all over the place. People smell funny and things going on. People talking through the night. People waking up in the middle of the night trying to go through people's things, looking all around. People giving you food that wasn't even edible because they wouldn't eat it, but yet and still they served it to the people around them. All kind of conditions were going on in that place, and no one really cared. The people were down to earth. They were all suffering from the same conditions. The brothers and sisters were going through the problems that the world was giving them, each one suffering from either mental, emotional, or conditions that were not giving them the proper condition they needed to be in to make their self work. I know, and I seen it, and I know these brothers and sisters out here all over the planet, white, black, Chinese, Indians, Africans, all of them going through their little conditions because the world is not supposed to be easy. Because if it was easy, then we wouldn't want to leave and go to the kingdom of heaven. And I always go back to that. Why? They say if there's a God, and if there's a God, then why does God allow misery to happen on the earth? Because God did not create us to stay here and live on this earth and want to be here and desire the things of the world. God created us for the purpose of serving the Creator, giving our lives for each other, to watch out for each other, to talk to each other, to communicate with each other. When we started looking and trying to find out what was going on with this one and that one, and helping out this one and doing this one and fixing that, and then things will start to change. But when you start to greed and the selfishness and desires only for your own happiness, and no one else's happiness matters, and you can just love the next person but you don't like that one down the block, and you just feel some kind of way about this one, but yet and still you don't mind when a person's doing dirty things to people, then you're bad, man. I mean, it's really, really bad the way things is happening out here. The desires that we have are not for human rights anymore. No one even worries about the next man's rights. Next man's rights mean nothing as long as their rights are being okay. As long as they're getting fun and they're having money and they're doing things for themselves, they don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Homelessness has gotten on the rise, man. There's more people homeless on the street now than there was ever, and a lot of it's drugs. So we can sit back and say everybody's just homeless because they didn't do anything. Some people are just homeless because they have no mental state. Some people are homeless because they got high when they were young and freaked their heads up and they can't think anymore. Some people are homeless because the landlord was just a little too greedy, wanted everything all the way down to that check they're supposed to get back when they leave the building so they can pay for the next place. The landlord was just so greedy, he wanted every dollar of it. I'm going through it right now. See, I took a place because someone said, go, let the program get you a place. I got a place for a little while. And from homelessness with not a debt, no money that I owed, anything was going on fine as far as I was just homeless, to a place where I was in debt and I owed somebody. And when I left, they still said I owed them. So they're going to take some of the security. That's what I was talking about. And they're going to make it assuredly that they can get enough of that security back so that they're not going to give me enough to move on. Uh, but I know God. See, God wants you to make mistakes so that you can suffer for them. And see, right now I'm suffering for my mistake. But those people that have been taking people's money and robbing people because they want to make more money than what they're making and supposed to do, what they're supposed to be doing is giving people what they need to survive, and they taking advantage of people. Those people are going to get it in the end because God says you got to commit the crime before you can be punished for it. So it was already predicted that those people at the place would take a portion of my security away. Even though there was nothing broken, nothing wrong, they just want to be greedy and they want to steal. And they stealing from the state, they're stealing from the government, they're stealing from everybody. They're robbing housing, they're stealing from everything. They just rob. Basically, they do what they want. And no one questions them because guess what? They're the one with the paper and the pencil. You don't have no power over them. Only God has power over the evil, wicked people of the planet. And at the end of the day, those people have to suffer for the things that they've been doing. Trust and believe it comes back. So all the evil you want to do to people, go ahead and do it because at the end of the day, everybody's gonna get old one day. And when they get old, may God help them. Or worse, God may ignore you for a little while anyway. All right. But like I said, I've heard multiple times and listened over and over again to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speaking, preaching, talking, and I'm still seeing the earth getting just as bad as it was before. I mean, I've heard more white people now saying that they like the way he speaks, and I've heard a lot of brothers and sisters that said they want to hear him preach. I'm watching pastors talking and listening to a minister that was a Muslim and is a Muslim. Because at the end of the day, we're all Muslims. Muslim means one who submits to the will of God, one who submits to the will of God, one who submits to the will of God. So Muslims, the ones that are submitting to God's will, whether they be Christian, Jew, or or whatever religion they are, if they're submitting to God's will, then they're Muslims. So all of us can come together and sit and preach and pray and talk to each other and get better understanding, from Jews to Christians to Buddhists to whoever comes and sits down in front, up front, or wherever you at, you can sit down and listen to each other, because God said what? He made man. He didn't say what color, what place, or what direction who was the denomination, or what church he came from. God made man, and let us make man. It didn't just say let me make man and I make man. It said let us make man in the image and our likeness, male and female make them. And the other story where they said God made man and made him and fashioned them and did all this stuff to him, and out of mud and this and that, sure. But you have to sit back and think, understand that God made man. It said let us make man, male and female. We made them because there was a male and a female. No homosexual God that's male by itself and makes men and women. No, goddesses, ancient Egypt, Kemet, where you want to say, call it, shows those pictures on the walls of the gods and goddesses of that time period. The the gods and goddesses that were there before all this stuff started, before the Europeans went in there and stole the information and brought it back and gave it to us as one real superior God that created everything was a white man and Ron Hick, the old, that old guy, the white one. No, that wasn't true. The original understanding was that the gods and the goddesses made man in their image and their likeness, male and female. They made them. Let us create man in our image and our likeness. That's what it said. I don't know how many people are watching. I don't think anybody's watching at this point right now because I don't see nobody on the screen. And I'm going to sit back and try to figure this whole thing out. Brothers and sisters, I don't know exactly what you're doing or exactly what you're thinking or where you're at. But when you hear this, understand that there is a God. And yes, God has many, many, many people on the planet that they're planning to come back and deal with these problems, because there's so many of us on the planet that they have to deal with the problems on the planet. And trust and believe the evil, wicked ones will suffer from the wickedness that they created. It doesn't say that they won't, and shortly as they understand now, whites, blacks, Chinese, Indians, and Africans all over the planet are looking at each other, talking to each other, communicating with each other, dealing with each other as a condition. We're getting to understand that it wasn't us that created this problem. It was them. The rich get richer and the poor get more poorer. Brothers and sisters, it's not the way we think it is. It's more. So when you start looking, turn off your TV sets, turn off your radios, stop watching all this stuff that they're programming us with, because it's television and TV programming that keeps us walking around in a visual. They don't even show us half the stuff that's going on. They just give us what they want us to see. So I hope you understand and it enlightens you just as well as I'm sure some of you will be entertained, because that's Ross Robbie, it's me. But I love you all. Peace. Assalamu alaikum and good night.